This is a recording to try to help you remember the sum and difference formulas for the sine and cosine of either the sum or difference of two angles. And so I have them written out a little bit right here. And basically, when you're looking at these, the way I remember it is through this little chant that I heard in high school. So my high school trig teacher said that when she was in college, this professor said that their class was not remembering the sum and difference formulas. So being a large man, he was up there and he started dancing around and chanting sine, cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, 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 cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, 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 cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, sine. And really that's just the formula here for the sum and difference of the sine and cosine functions. So the sine, cosine, cosine, sine, that's right here. So sine, cosine, cosine, sine, right there. And all you do is stick in the angles after that. So your first angle A, second angle B, first angle A, second angle B. Same thing for the cosine. Cosine, cosine, sine, sine. So you just throw in your A's and B's. So A, B, A, B. And one thing to make note of on both of these is that for the sine, SIN, the signs SIGN are the same. So that plus and minus, same as the plus and minus that you have between the two sine, cosine, cosine, sine terms. For the cosine of A plus or minus B, your signs switch. So you get this, instead of plus, you get a minus. Instead of minus, you get a plus. And so right there, you get those two that switch the signs SIGN. So instead of a plus, you put a minus, or instead of a minus, you put a plus. So that always swaps. But just the general, what do you have for sines and cosines? It's always sine, cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, sine. And then you just have to remember if it's plus or minus in the middle, according to the sine or the cosine. There's another one that I made up for tangent that's not very good, so we'll go ahead and talk about the tangent as well. Let me go ahead and erase that. So if you're looking at the tangent function, here's our tangent. So same thing, tangent of A plus or minus B. And with this guy, what we want to make sure is that with this one, so I'm going to put that tangent back in, we get this guy right here, tangent of A plus or minus tangent of B. So it's still A and B on top. And then same thing, A and B on the bottom. Plus and minus on top, minus and plus on the bottom. So signs stay the same on the top, but they switch on the bottom. So if you're using a plus inside the tangent, then you get a plus on top, minus on bottom. If you're using a minus inside that first tangent, you get a minus on top and a plus on the bottom. So top stays the same, just like the sine. Bottom switches, just like the cosine. And then you just fill in your angles. So if you want to fill in your angles at that point, you can go and fill those in. So we'll go and fill those in. So this would be A and B, and A and B. And the way I remember this is just on the top is tan plus tan, on the bottom 1 minus tan tan. So tan plus tan, 1 minus tan tan, tan plus tan, 1 minus tan tan. That gives me the sum. I know to just switch the signs if I'm using a minus. So minus on top, plus on the bottom. So there's not a real nice way to remember that one, but tan plus tan, 1 minus tan tan. That's usually how I remember it. And then just stick in the angles A and B, A and B. So tonight, if you want, before you go to bed, hopefully it gets stuck in your head a little bit, and before your head hits the pillow, you just remember sine, cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, 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 cosine, cosine, sine, cosine, cosine, sine, sine.